Thank you for joining us this Tuesday night. This is the Tuesday of the Passion Week, and we've been following along in the footsteps of Jesus. He has now come into the Jerusalem area. He's already had his triumphal entry on Palm Sunday. He's gone back and spent the night in Bethany Monday night, came back over and taught in the temple. Basically, he was the lamb that was being inspected. That evening, Monday evening, he went back and spent the night in Bethany again. And now we pick up Tuesday morning of the Passion Week with Jesus. And in Mark chapter 11 and verse 20, in the morning, they got up and they made that same pilgrimage back across the Mount of Olives, down into the Kidron Valley. When they got up to the top of the Mount of Olives, there the disciples stopped Jesus and said, "Hey, remember that fig tree? You cursed it yesterday. It's dried up from the roots today." And that's when Jesus said, "Have faith in God." And folks, that's what we need, is faith in the Lord himself. Because it seems like it's impossible. The fig tree represented the Jewish nation. That would seem like it would be utterly destroyed, dried up literally from the roots. Jesus even wept that day over the city of Jerusalem. But yet, Jesus is telling people, says, have faith in God, because the miraculous can occur. You can say to this mountain, be cast yonder into the sea, and it shall be done. Because God can do the impossible in your life when we believe and have faith in him. He took his disciples on into Jerusalem, and he spent the day there basically teaching parables and talking with the people there in the temple. In the temple, he talked about the widow's offerings, and he came in and he positioned himself where he could see the people giving their offering into the temple. Now remember, there's tens of thousands of people that are coming in that are giving their offering into the priesthood, into the temple. And the way they had it up, they had things like tubas, and those were big circular funnels that got narrower as they got smaller. And there was a series of them. Some of them were big, and when you threw coins in them, it's like those things you put a coin in and it goes round and round and round and round, picks up speed as it gets closer to the center before it drops in. They had those made out of brass, and they would make a loud sound. So if you put a lot of money into it, like a lot of the rich people did, it made a huge sound to be heard so that everybody could marvel about how much they were giving to the Lord. But Jesus sat there and he watched the people give, and he looked at this one little widow woman who was very poor, and she put in her widow's mite. It didn't make much noise, didn't make much a sound. There wasn't anybody that turned around to look at who put that little bit of money in. But it caught the eye of Jesus, because Jesus doesn't look at the amount. He looks at the heart of what you're giving. And he looked at his disciples and said, you know, people put in all kinds of money, but this woman that put in that widow's mite, she's put in more than all of them, because she put in all that she had. I tell you what, Jesus pays attention to even the smallest details in our lives. He went on and taught them about the parables of the two sons. And this is found in Matthew 21 and in verse 28 through 32. And I want to read that to you. It starts out and says, "What do you think? There was a man who had two sons. He went to the first and said, 'Son, go and work today in my vineyard.' The son said, 'I will not,' he answered, but later changed his mind and went. Then the father went to the other son and said the same thing. He answered, 'I will, sir,' but he did not go. Which of the two did what his father wanted?" Well, of course, the son that went, at first he said, "I will not," but went ahead and did it. Folks, this is for you to understand that actions speak louder than words. And a lot of people say a lot of things, and they say a lot of things to the Lord, and they say, I love the Lord, but you never see them in church. You say, oh, I'm a Christian, I'm going by the ways of Christ, but you never see them applying the ways of Christ in their lives. Jesus notices your action even more than what your words are. He likes to see your fruits of repentance. Then he also taught about the great commandment. And this is in Deuteronomy 5, Exodus 20, and in Deuteronomy 6. It's called the Shema in the Jewish literature. And the greatest commandment, they asked him, Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? And he said, to love the Lord with all thy heart, mind, soul, and strength. This is the first and great commandment. And the second commandment is likened unto this, to love thy neighbor as thyself. And folks, when you look at those two commandments that Jesus said are the greatest commandments, it's quite apparent to me that it's about the Lord first, to love him with everything in your heart, mind, soul, and strength. But it's also about everybody else around you. We live in a generation, and the world wants us to focus on me, my stuff, my happiness, my pleasure. The world wants you to participate in its sin for a season, to bring you pleasure for a period of time. But folks, we need to realize it's nothing about us, but it's literally about all the people around us to be that witness for Christ. Finally, that evening, when the evening had come, they had departed back, and they went back to Bethany, and they had dinner that night at a place called Simon the leper's house. Remember, Bethany was a place where sick people were, where poor people were. And there, in Simon the leper's house, Jesus was anointed by a woman. The Bible really doesn't say her name. A lot of people think it was Mary Magdalene. Nobody knows for sure. But she took an alabaster box of precious perfume and doused it and anointed his head. And he said, because she has done this, because she has worshiped me, she will be remembered forever. Everybody will be talking about what this woman did. Judas at that time said, this money should have been given to the poor and not wasted. Folks, you don't waste your worship when you worship Jesus. In fact, her worship filled the house with an aroma of worship that choked out the stench of sickness. It took away the stench of poverty and of desperation. You want to get rid of desperation? Worship the Lord.